Hello and welcome to today's video. My name's Adam, I'm an ancient Greek reenactor and history enthusiast. So, the Spartans, a fascinating culture and society which spanned for hundreds of years. Famous for its military strength, this great civilization has had its fair share of portrayals in modern media. The image which seems to be pushed into our modern minds are shredded men with short to medium hair. This can be seen in films like 300 and games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Perhaps it is commonly thought that a culture that was so famous for its warriors and warfare would have short hair, similar to how our modern military have short hair. However, it was quite the opposite. Now, as the Lacedaemonians, or Spartans, existed for hundreds of years, it is safe to say that their culture and style also changed. The same way that you could look at hairstyles from the 80s and hairstyles from today and be able to pick them apart, and that is a very short span of time. Hair plays quite an important role in culture, and it also did back in ancient Greece. Hair was a common indicator of class and origin, and particularly Spartans became known for having long flowing hair. Now, it's important to note that long hair was not a distinctly Spartan style. In fact, it is highly likely that men had long hair for centuries in Greece. Now, Homer, who writes around the 8th century BC, describes men as being long-haired, and long hair actually continued to remain quite popular in the 6th century BC, however started to become rarer in the 5th. Now, this seems to change after the Persian Wars, where it appears that men decided to cut their hair short. Now, there's actually a theory that this is because the Persians wore their hair long, and therefore they cut their hair short to differentiate between them. Men having long hair was associated with being wealthy or powerful, and slaves would be commonly cut short. However, this drastically changes when Athenian men would decide to later have their hair cut short. Athenian boys were said to have worn their hair long before puberty and have it cut short as they transitioned to adulthood. Quite the opposite to the Spartans. Now, Spartan boys had their hair trimmed until they hit puberty, but they then were allowed to grow it long. And there's actually quite an interesting myth as to why the Spartans decided to suddenly grow their hair long, written by Herodotus. Herodotus writes about the Battle of 300 Champions, which was fought between Argos and Sparta. Each side said that they would send 300 of their best men to fight. Both sides claimed victory, however, after the Spartans proved victorious after taking the town of Thyrea. Herodotus reports that after that point on, Argive men swore to cut their hair short until they took back the town, and Spartan men, who presumably wore their hair short beforehand, said that they'd keep it long to honour that victory. Now remember, this is a myth. The battle itself took place around 546 BC, which is a time where long hair was quite common throughout Greece. Keep in mind that Herodotus was writing at a time where long hair was famously Spartan, and short hair was more common. Now, another interesting example is from the writer Plutarch, who wrote in the 2nd century AD. Now, he writes that during the Peloponnesian War, the Athenian noble Alcibiades defects to the Spartans, and whilst proclaiming his loyalty to them, kept his hair long. Now, hair was very important to both men and women in Sparta, and many scholars currently claim that their styles would have actually been very similar. Now, their hair was so important and viewed as such an ornament that before battle, Spartan men would dress their hair. A famous account for this, Herodotus tells us, is when a Persian scout finds Spartans dressing their hair before the Battle of Thermopylae, and when he reports back, he is informed that they are most likely preparing themselves for battle. Now, Spartans having long hair can be traced back to the legendary lawgiver Lycurgus, who states that beautiful men with beautiful hair can make them more beautiful, and that men with ugly hair will make them more ugly. Another account is when a Spartan is asked why men wear long hair, and he replies, because it's the cheapest ornament. Now, as for the colour of hair, black was the most common, however blonde was the most prized, and many legendary heroes such as Achilles are described as having golden hair. It seems that a common style for both men and women of Sparta were to have their hair almost in a knot on the crown of their head. And another theory as to why Spartans wore their hair long was because it made it incredibly hard to do manual labour, and helped them stand out as rich and gentlemanly. I hope you enjoyed this video about why Spartans had long hair. I hope you learned a few things. Perhaps I can do a more in-depth video on hairstyles in Greece if that's something you'd be interested in. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one.